The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
The Kansas City Chiefs made Trey Smith the highest paid guard in the NFL.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
There is a ton to talk about when it comes to this Trey Smith deal. A lot of money going to Trey Smith, 4 years, $94 million, a lot more than I ever expected that they would be paying him. But they got the deal done, and that's what's important. That's what really matters right now. So when you start looking at how this is going to break down, he's 26 years old. He will be 30 when this deal ends. And there is going to be some talk about, did they overpay him? When you look at the rest of the NFL guard market, he is $2.5 million above the next highest paid guard in the NFL. So it is very easy to look at this and say they overpaid for Trey Smith. The one thing that they have going for him, and this is something I'll talk about a lot more in the salary cap update later, but one thing that they have going for him is they kept his cap numbers down a lot lower than I expected them to, and I will tell you how they did that in just a moment. But the thing is when you start looking at the salary cap, he's got a 14.25 salary cap number in 2025, which is going to add $9 million worth of cap space for the Chiefs in 2025. There's a lot that they can do with that. We will talk about that in the coming week. But next year in 2026, his cap number is 24.25. In 2027 and 2028, it's $27.75 million for his deal. He did get a signing bonus of about $17 million. So that gets spread out across the contract at $4.25 million per year, $46.75 million fully guaranteed, with $70 million essentially being guaranteed. And you do have a little bit of guaranteed salary in 2026, which is part of why that is such a large number, 46.75. But then he also has something that will kick in and will guarantee part of his contract in March of 2026. If he's still in Kansas City, his third year in 2027 will become guaranteed. Essentially, it becomes a 3-year deal for about $70 million in guaranteed money, which is all the $70 million is guaranteed for injury purposes. 46.75 is guaranteed currently under salary, but I do believe that in March of 2026, 2027 will become fully guaranteed. They would have to cut him in order for that not to be guaranteed, from my understanding of this contract, which means it's essentially guaranteeing him $70 million. The interesting thing I think on this is $2.5 million above the current guard market, which tells you that they were expecting that they were going to be paying him top market deal regardless. But it's interesting because they're paying him just a little bit more than what it would cost the franchise tag. If you take the franchise tag times 3 or times 4, it's just a little bit more than what they're paying him. It would have been like $93.6 million. At this point, it's $94 million. So they're paying him $23.5 million for the year. This is a deal that I expected to get done. I didn't expect it to get done at this rate. I did expect that it would be closer down to $22.5 million. So this came in at about $1 million higher than I was expecting on a year-to-year basis. However, this does give Kansas City a interior offensive line with Creed Humphrey and with Trey Smith that is one of the best duos in the NFL. If they can get even average to above average play at the left guard spot, and then you figure out your tackle situation with maybe Josh Simmons in 2025 or 2026, and you get Jalen Moore as your right tackle in 2026, I do think that you have at least 3/5 of this Chiefs offensive line under contract for maybe even 4/5 of this Chiefs offensive line under contract for the next 4 years. Well, yeah, for the next 4 years at this point. 3 years, I guess, because Kingsley Suamati, if he is considered the starter at left guard, would only be here for 3 more years. So I do think that this is a great starting point for the Chiefs. I was a little surprised about the way that they structured the contract. $17 million in a signing bonus was probably a little bit lower than I would have expected, but they came in and they did something that they don't normally do. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next segment. But it is interesting that they structured the deal this way. This tells me that they're looking forward and they're looking at how this is going to affect their cap, not only in 2025, but how it's going to affect what they can do in 2026, 2027, 2028, as long as he's under contract. So I do think that this deal becomes a lot more real, or a lot more sustainable and a lot cheaper feel to it once you get into 2025, because I do think that this is going to be a deal that is going to be used and probably beat even in 2026, and maybe even considerably. The cap went up a lot higher than the Chiefs were even expecting this year. That's the only reason they were able to franchise tag Trey Smith. They were expecting the cap to be about 270. It ended up being about 279. With that extra $10 million, they franchised Trey Smith. Now they get that money back and they're able to use it however they want in 2025, or maybe they are going to save it and roll it over to 2026. We will see what they do with that. But I do find this interesting that Kansas City has kind of changed, at least with this contract, the way they do contracts and how they structure their first-year deals. And I wonder if that does mean that maybe they're looking and trying to make some other extensions before, not necessarily before training camp, but before the regular season starts, kind of like they did with Noah Gray in the previous year.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Maybe the Cincinnati Bengals do. With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Jalen Hurts was yet again disrespected, but this time by my own Locked On Podcast Network peers.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast.
I got no issues with what this network did for the Eagles. 7 players made the top 100. That is the most of any team in the NFL. Saquon Barkley coming in at number 10. A.J. Brown at number 16. Lane Johnson at 18. So 3 players in the top 20. Jordan Mailata and Jalen Carter come in at 29 and 35. Jalen Hurts at number 46. And then Zach Bond at number 60. Look, again, I have very little issues with this list overall. I thought the network did an incredible job. But Jalen Hurts being at number 46 is just ridiculous. I think it's gone just way too far with Jalen's ranking on so many of these lists compared to other quarterbacks. Look, I feel like I'm very realistic, very impartial, non-biased with Jalen Hurts. Like, I understand that he's not ahead of Patrick Mahomes. I'm not putting him ahead of Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, even though he has the ring. He beat Patrick Mahomes, and those guys haven't been able to. I'm not putting him over the reigning MVP in Josh Allen. I'm realistic of who Jalen Hurts is as a player. I'm not saying he's better than those top 4. Those are the 4 top quarterbacks in football, even after the Super Bowl MVP season that Jalen Hurts just had. But to be ranked at number 46, like that's too far for me. I feel like he's getting dinged for a lot of things that other quarterbacks are not getting dinged for. I think he is held to a different standard than other quarterbacks. I think he's getting dinged for things like people believed Jalen Hurts coming out of Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts before the 2022 season was a one-dimensional quarterback. He was a great runner and a very limited passer. And while that is true at the time, that evaluation of Jalen would have been correct. That is not correct anymore. But people will not move off their pre-draft, pre-22 opinions of him. They're bullish, and new evidence, new information has not been able to change people's minds. Whereas a Josh Allen, year after year, pre-draft takes about who he was at Wyoming, who he was in 2018 and 2019, this erratic, overly aggressive hero ball player, people have changed as Josh Allen has changed. Their opinions of him have changed. People's opinions even of Lamar Jackson have come a longer way than people's takes on Jalen Hurts as Jalen has evolved as a player. The discourse with Jalen Hurts has not evolved over the years as he has evolved as a player like it has for Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson specifically. I think Jalen Hurts is getting dinged for things like his style of play and his strengths compared to these other quarterbacks. I think his role in 2024 is affecting his reputation. I think also the support system he has in Philadelphia on offense, defense, the front office, the coaching staff. Again, I think there's players that have a lot of these same things that Jalen has, these attributes that he gets discredited for that they don't. And that's why I feel like he's being held to a different standard, even by my own peers on this list. Not to call out anybody specifically, but you guys messed up. Number 46 for the Super Bowl MVP, like, come on, that's disrespectful. And I'd like to disprove in this segment, I'd like to point out the contradicting evaluation with Hurts compared to other quarterbacks. The first thing I said was people have believed Jalen Hurts is a certain kind of player for years, and they're not moving off of that as he's become a different player. Well, who he was pre-2022, that's not who Jalen Hurts is anymore. Like, unless you're living under a rock, Jalen Hurts is a completely different player. Right after that wild card game against Tampa Bay, everything changed. Like, he is not that limited. While he still isn't the passer of Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, he's not that limited guy of 2021. He's not the guy that got benched for Tua in the national championship. He's not the sporadic passer that he was at Oklahoma. And if anybody knows that, it's me. I was the biggest Jalen Hurts hater in 2021. And now I'm right now one of his biggest defenders, it feels like. And I do think because people thought of him a certain way and they didn't see him as a first-round pick, he's also suffering from, like, draft pick label. I think if he was a first-round pick, like even a top 32, doesn't have to be a top 10 selection, but top 15, top 20, top 32, if he was a day one pick in 2020 and he had the resume he currently has in the NFL, do you think he'd be getting ranked number 46? Do you think he'd be seen as, in the same light as he is right now? Or, like, if he was a top 10 selection and he played this style and he had the resume, he has the on-field accomplishments, are we really believing that he would be as underrated and disrespected as he is right now? I don't think so. So I think he is totally a completely different player, and I think he's proven that. Even last year, with his limited role in the offense, I think he's proven that he is not that. I mean, look at Super Bowl 59. The Jalen Hurts of 2021 is never answering that call against Spags' all-out pressures, completely taking out Saquon Barkley. Spags kind of used the same blueprint that Todd Bowles did in that wild card round. It was a full circle moment. Jalen completely figured it out, and he picked that defense apart. So I just think that's completely incorrect. And if it's about his style of play, his overall strengths, well, his overall production and his overall accomplishments are just as elite as those other star quarterbacks. He just does it in a different way. Like, yeah, is he posting over 4,000 passing yards every year and over 30 passing touchdowns? No, but he's still getting around the same yardage as these star quarterbacks because while he's putting up around normally 35 to 3,700 passing yards a year, he's also putting up over 600 rushing yards and over 10 rushing touchdowns. And that's on top of 18 to 24 passing touchdowns that he's averaged over the last 3 years. So I think his style is what people don't love, but production is production. And Jalen Hurts is doing it in a different way. He's producing more like Cam Newton used to produce and Russell Wilson used to produce in Seattle. It's not the same way as it's not the same way as Aaron Rodgers used to put up numbers and Peyton Manning and what Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen do now. But it doesn't matter. Like, he's elite still. That's the thing. It's in a different way, but he's still an elite player. And I think his strengths, like, people don't take seriously his strengths. They don't put as much weight on his strengths as the strengths of other players. Like, he has an unlimited all-time clutch gene. It's one of the best I've ever seen from a quarterback. I think Jalen Hurts is one of the best big game ball players that we've seen in the NFL. Like while he's not always a top 5 elite player, he's more sporadic than other guys. He is always elite in the biggest games, in the NFC Championship, in the Super Bowl. Gotta have it moments in the regular season. And I wish that kind of stuff mattered more, but I don't think it really does. And if this is about, if his reputation right now is about his role in 2024 as a limited player that was kind of the Robin to Saquon Barkley's Batman, well, I think he proved in previous years, he proved first off in the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl this year, if the offense has to feature Jalen Hurts, you can win a championship that way. I think he proved that in 2022 as well, when he was the MVP runner-up. In 2023, the first half of the year, after that Bills game, that's like 12, 13 games into the year. It was 11 games into the year, excuse me. He was the MVP favorite according to FanDuel's odds. So if you think that Jalen Hurts is a limited game manager carried by an offense, well, over the last 3 years, 2 of those 3 years, Jalen Hurts was the featured player of the Eagles offense. And in a year and a half of that span, he was an MVP favorite. So, and it's not like Josh Allen's role didn't change in 2024. Josh Allen's team went extremely run heavy this year. They were top 10 in rushing attempts. Josh Allen won MVP. Why is he not held to the same standard as Jalen Hurts? He kind of took a back seat to James Cook as well. Patrick Mahomes led the league this year in passes behind the line of scrimmage. His role was different than it was in like 2019 when he was slinging it all over the field. Why is Jalen Hurts dinged for changing his role as his personnel has changed, but Josh Allen isn't and Patrick Mahomes isn't? And if it's about his support system, look at the support system of Patrick Mahomes. He's had one of the best, I think the best play caller of all time is his head coach in Andy Reid. He's had the greatest tight end of all time as his number 1 target in Travis Kelce. He had years of Tyreek Hill as his receiver, one of the best deep threats in the history of the NFL. He's had an elite defense the majority of his career in Kansas City. His offensive line's been up and down, but he's had good offensive lines. He's had good run games. He's had good receiving cores. I think he has one right now with Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce. Like, Josh Allen's had a good team around him. Lamar Jackson's had a great team around him for years, and yet they don't get dinged for it, but Jalen Hurts does. And yet, when you look at guys that don't have as good of a support system like Justin Herbert, they get a pass completely. So you can't evaluate the guy that has a strong support system. You can't evaluate the guy that has a weak one because you make excuses for him, but you negate the credit of the quarterback in a good offense like Jalen, even though he elevates that offense, whether you like it or not. Who are we supposed to fairly evaluate? And I don't want to hear I saw Justin Herbert was ahead of Jalen Hurts. On these rankings, he's listed at number 39. Jalen Hurts number 46. Justin Herbert is 7 spots ahead. Justin Herbert is 7 spots ahead of Jalen Hurts. When Justin Herbert is 0-2 in the playoffs, he has a 52% completion percentage, only 2 passing touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He chokes consistently in the postseason. Jalen Hurts consistently rises to the challenge in the postseason. Like, those things have to matter more in these evaluations, and I just don't think they do. And I think Jalen Hurts, I think he falls victim to a lot of these things. He's held to these different standards that other quarterbacks aren't. I just can't take you seriously. If you're putting Justin Herbert or Jaden Daniels ahead of him, even Matt Stafford, I don't love that. I can kind of understand it because I think Matt Stafford is a top 6 quarterback in football, and I think Hurts is 5, he's 6, so it's very close. Both have a ring in the last 4 years. But if you put Justin Herbert or Jaden Daniels ahead of Jalen Hurts, I'm sorry. I can't really take your opinion seriously. So, look, at the end of the day, he's a Super Bowl MVP with a ring. He's outplayed a top 2 player of all time in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. He has the second most touchdowns of any quarterback in football since 2022. Like, the proof is in the pudding. Sorry, that's to me what matters. He rises up when the games matter most. He's a top 5 player when they need him to be. And I think right now they don't need him to be because they have a super team. But when they do, like Super Bowl 59, like Super Bowl 57, he's that guy. It's in a way that people don't always like stylistically. His strengths aren't always the strengths that people value as much. But for me, and again, I'm realistic. I'm not putting him ahead of Burrow, Lamar, Allen, or Mahomes. But to put him at number 46 behind Jaden Daniels and Justin Herbert and Matt Stafford, I think that's wrong. I think we messed up on that one for sure.
We've all been there. logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, Gametime Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast.
As we release our top 100 players in the NFL. And the opportunity to submit a ballot was afforded to all of the NFL hosts. And we submitted our ballots. They put it together, and we have a list of the 100 best players in the NFL. And today on the podcast, I want to discuss this with you from the lens of the Buffalo Bills. Which players made it, which players should have made it, and then just a lot of my observations about the list, in particular with how it compared to my own ballot. And I got to tell you, there's a lot that I disagree with. A lot. And we will unpack it here today. Let's start with who made it. And there's only 2 Bills players on it. That's it. Josh Allen and Christian Benford. We'll talk more about the players that should have made it in the next segment. But for now, let's focus in on Josh Allen and Christian Benford. So where does Josh Allen come in? Third. I had him at number 1. The consensus of the ballots submitted has Lamar Jackson at number 1, Patrick Mahomes at number 2, and Josh Allen at number 3. I do not enjoy the conversations that argue for one over the other, because what I don't like about those conversations is you spend all this time tearing down the other players to elevate the one that you prefer. But I want to start by acknowledging this. Those are 3 awesome players. Elite, tier 1 NFL quarterbacks. I think the Mount Rushmore of NFL quarterbacks right now is Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow. That's the cream of the crop. But I do believe that Josh Allen deserves to be ranked number 1 among them. Josh Allen is the most prolific touchdown producing quarterback ever. The most touchdowns per game in NFL history. He just completed his 5th consecutive season of 40 touchdowns. Nobody else has a streak longer than 2. This guy produces unlike any player the National Football League has ever seen. And then there was this turnover narrative that cost him a couple of MVPs, to be honest. And the context was always really lacking. Josh Allen always made up for his dues. Paid his dues and made up for any turnovers that he made. And when you look at the EPA lost on turnovers, it was always a very exaggerated talking point, but it's what people cling to. Well, Josh Allen just went out and had the greatest season in the history of the NFL for lowest percentage of plays that resulted in a sack, fumble, or an interception. The best ever. 4.2% of plays. Never been better by any other player in the history of the league. So he just had the greatest season ever of taking care of the football and is the greatest touchdown producing quarterback in NFL history. Player 1. reigning NFL MVP. And what I love about Josh Allen being the reigning NFL MVP is it's not because of volume stats. He didn't have the most yards this year. He didn't have the most touchdowns this year. But what everybody appreciated about Josh Allen and why he's the NFL MVP is because he did it while his supporting cast flipped upside down. 2 new starters on the offensive line, the whole new receiving core, no Stephon Diggs, right? The most meaningful player that he had over the previous 4 seasons, gone. Gabe Davis, gone. And he went out there and engineered the most prolific scoring offense the Buffalo Bills have ever had. The number 1 scoring offense in the AFC. Patrick Mahomes has lost parts, and he's become much less productive. Lamar Jackson had an unbelievable season last year, and you can't help but say, yeah, Derrick Henry came in and unlocked even more of Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen had parts stripped away and did what he did last year. Josh Allen's number 1 player in the league. Should be. And again, I hate the idea of having to tear other players down. I really do, because I think Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes are awesome tier 1 elite players. But my big issue with Lamar Jackson is the playoffs. 243 yards per game in 8 playoff games, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. That includes rushing. 243 yards per game, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions in 8 games. Passer rating below 85. It's pedestrian. The best player in the NFL is Lamar Jackson, but he's not at his best when his team needs him to be. Couldn't say that about Josh Allen. Josh Allen's building an all-time playoff resume. Don't talk to me about Super Bowls. That's a team thing. Josh Allen himself, an unbelievable all-time playoff resume that he's building. So Lamar's got to come through when his team needs him the most, and he doesn't. And a lot of that's on him. Unforced errors. You saw it against the Bills. Fumbled the ball. Didn't get stripped from his hands. He fumbled the ball. The DeMar Hamlin play last year. I mean, the opening drive, he gets big-eyed and sees one high coverage and forgets to hold the safety, and airmails one to Taylor Rapp. We know the pick 6 to Taron Johnson. That cost them in the first playoff loss to the Bills. We saw what he did in the NFC or AFC Championship game against Kansas City the year before. I mean, the guy's got to be better in the postseason. I can't put him at number 1 until he proves that. And look, Patrick Mahomes, he's on the Mount Rushmore of all-time NFL quarterbacks. But the last 2 years have been pedestrian for Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has been the starting quarterback of the 15th ranked scoring offense each of the last 2 years. Last year, that team was 21st in yards per pass last year. I know that there was a lot of inconsistency with his weapons, right? They counted on Rashee Rice. He gets hurt. They don't have Hollywood Brown to start the year. Xavier Worthy's a rookie. I get it. Travis Kelce regression. I get it. And to their credit, I mean, he figured it out, right? He came through. They won 15 games in the regular season. They went to the Super Bowl because he's able to figure it out when it matters most, and that's what makes Pat really special. But this isn't a legacy list, right? Last 2 years, he's been the starting quarterback of a pedestrian offense. Now, look, I know they've been to the last 3 Super Bowls. Like, I get it. I wish that the Bills had the defensive play calling in the postseason and the health with their defense in the postseason. Maybe it'd be a different story. So, look, Mahomes is awesome. Lamar is awesome. Josh Allen of late has been a little more awesome, and I think he deserved to be the number 1 player on our list.